Welcome back, Sports on the Hill podcast fans. CP3 live in the lab. We got Robbie G from the Man Cave, and we have a special guest tonight. We're coming to you a little bit later, but that's how it is sometimes. When you're on the studio, you kind of make your own hours and decide when we do a show and how we want to do a show. We come at you a little bit later tonight. You might be up watching the New York Yankees Tampa Bay Rays game. Right now, the Yankees up 4-1 in the bottom of the eighth with a man on. They're looking to tie the series to fourth of game five. But tonight, we're talking football because we have a great player from a era of football most of our listeners probably know little to none about. And we're going to give you some education. And Robbie G was on this game and was able to book an interview with this great guest. And I'm going to let Robbie introduce him and get everybody familiar with this guest that we have tonight.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Carol. So for those who might know, in 1964, Walter Roberts' first year in the league, the Baltimore Colts won the West easily with 3 games remaining, and the Browns had a tougher run with just edging out the St. Louis Cardinals by a half a game in the East. Back then in the NFL, just a few years prior to the merger of the AFL, only game in the playoffs was the meeting of the East and the West regular season champions for a championship game. It had been 7 years since the Browns had been in the finals, and NFL legend Jim Brown had not yet won a title. You were able to be in your first season, be a part of that legendary team for the Cleveland Browns, and they went on to win 27-0 in one of the last NFL championship games before the Super Bowl. What was that experience like in your first season?
It was magnificent. I came in with a group, Paul Warfield, Leroy Kelly, Sidney Williams. We had a good bunch of rookies, and we're playing with guys like Paul Warfield and Jim Brown. That's about as great as you can get it.
Yeah,
great experience.
Yeah. So, who was sort of the people that were trying to help you along in that first season? Get that adjustment. Coming from college and moving up. And I mean, you had a good team already. And how did they get from being a good team to a great team?
Yeah. Well, I was really lucky because during that time, the champions had to play the college all-stars every year. And so I think, I guess it was the Chicago Bears, 63, I guess it was. They played the college all-stars. So Paul Warfield was gone for like 2-3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it gave me really a great opportunity to get some action.
Yeah.
So they brought in a real great Browns player, Ray Renfro. Ray Renfro was a great pass route runner, and he'd been there a stalwart for the Browns. And he spent like 2 weeks helping us, showing us the ropes on how to run routes. We ran the tree, everything off of the quick post, off of the post corner, off of the false shake, off of the straight post, skinny post. We ran all of that off of that same tree. So I was lucky, and I got a lot of playing time early because Paul was not there. He was the number 1 draft choice. So I wasn't drafted. I came in as a free agent.
Yeah.
And so I got to play early in the first game in San Francisco, got a lot of playing time, went down to the Rams, got a lot of playing time. So I was very lucky as rookies go.
Yeah, that's for sure. So who do you remember that was sort of helping you along in that first year, like trying to mentor you through this process?
Well, there were a lot of guys on the Browns team who really, the Browns were very professional. There was not a lot of rah-rah. Everything was very professional. You couldn't ask for a better teammate, than Jim Brown. I mean, you have to understand how great a player he was. I thought I knew how great he was because he was always one of my heroes growing up. But hey, there's nothing like being on the field with him at the same time. But he really helped a lot by keeping us focused. Actually, a lot of guys. Clifton McNeil was on the Cab squad, but he was a great receiver. And this was his second year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But he really helped us a lot. Gary Collins, great receiver. As great as he was, he really helped us, all the rookies. He was there for everybody. So it was a great time playing for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, it was so cool that it was a sort of insertion of this young talent and some of these old veterans and coming together and really becoming a true team, so to speak. And I know that, he was such a legend, in the running back, space. And, you see a lot of, stories about him, but it's cool to hear that he was a good person and he really helped, the younger players. And, I think that that's such an exciting thing to hear and to help him sort of break through, because obviously he had wanted to get to that ultimate thing, but it's hard to win in that day's NFL because there wasn't a playoffs. You couldn't sort of slip in, you
Hey,
know.
well, if you didn't win your division, you go home. Okay.
Yeah.
None of this 8-8, and then you wind up in the playoffs. No, it
Carol,
was a great time.
Era of
Well,
football.
the Browns had been close every year, but they were playing in the Eastern Conference against the New York Giants. And of course, during that time, they had Andy Robustelli, Jim Cat Cabbage, had a great defense. And then they had Whitey Tittle as quarterback part of those years. So it was a tough hurdle to get over. So I think the Browns were always knocking at the door. But I think, well, Jim Brown said it best. He said at one point, uh, when they brought in the rookies, Leroy Kelly and myself, we led the league in 3 straight years in the NFL in punt and kickoff return yardage. So every time the Browns had the ball in 64, 65, we probably averaged on the 30, 35-yard line.
wow,
So so he felt that that was really one of the major differences that made allowed them to get over that hump.
for sure. Carol, any questions about the championship run and stuff like that to start his career?
Definitely got to ask about the great Jim Brown. He was definitely one of my idols when I played. Just the intensity and the passion that he played with. And you mentioned how he, helped mentor and you along and other athletes in that era. Just what was the impact of having him in the locker room and having someone of that stature, taking that time to take you under their wing and groom you and help you become a better NFL player.
Well, the things that I remember mostly, he's still a good friend, by the way. But Jim he led by example. He wasn't really a rah rah guy, not nothing like that. The 3 years I was at the Browns, I never saw him in the training room. Never missed a game. Never missed a practice. And I give you an example of how great he was. Hey, listen, I've never lost a race under 75 yards. I was never a trackster. I was a long jumper coming out of high school. But I would be lined up on the line of scrimmage as a split end. They called it the wide receiver, then was a split end, and then you had the flanker. And Jim Brown was lined up 5 or 6 yards in the backfield. Well, we'd be running dummy plays, and I'd look up, and Jim Brown would be running stride for stride with me. And that has never happened in my whole life.
Wow.
And another thing, to give you an example now, not to, I'm not bragging or anything, but after the '64 Olympics, Bob Hayes, we had a match race at Fremont High School in Los Angeles and a 50-yard dash race, and I won that race going away.
Wow.
But in all due respect, though, Bob Hayes had the Cowboys uniform on, and he had track shoes, no pads, but he had a uniform on. But they had the city champion of LA was in that race. And Joe Womack, who was a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers during that time, he was in that race. But I'm saying I won that race going away. And
Wow.
and Jim Brown runs stride for stride with me. And he's
Wow.
weighing 232 pounds. Okay.
Excuse me.
So it was really unbelievable how good he was. I thought I knew how good he was until I got there. And I saw him run play after play. Never a bad play with him. Guards pulling, if the guards caught in that hole, he just kind of kick you right on through the hole. I mean, he was unbelievable. To this day, it's hard to imagine how good he was compared to a lot of other players that I played with.
Yes,
Wow.
sir. Yes, sir. The fact that he left early and still had more years in him is one of the
Yeah,
things we
yeah,
would never know how great he
exactly. Excuse
could
me a
have
minute.
been himself.
This thing is still coming on.
It happens all the time. Live,
Yeah.
love the live air.
Well, he was really great. I mean, there are a lot of great players on that team, by the way. Ernie Green was a running back, great ball player. I think Paul Warfield and Gary Collins is. There are a lot of great tandem that's played in the league, but that's one of the best in my opinion.
So I got to ask you a couple of questions going back a little bit, because obviously you lettered in football, baseball, and track at Compton High School. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about, growing up and, playing,
In Compton?
yeah.
Well, two of my early teammates at Compton High School, Marvin Fleming, tight end for the Packers when they won those championships, wound up with the Dolphins. They won 2 more Super Bowls. So Marvin Fleming was one of my teammates. Roy Jefferson, the great Redskin.
Mm-hmm.
I was a quarterback in high school. He was my receiver.
Oh, wow.
I talked to him the other day. I keep apologizing for not getting the ball to him enough. Yeah, but I grew up in Compton. I was a baseball player primarily. I was state long jump champion in 1960 at Stanford University.
Mm-hmm.
I had the longest jump in the nation, 24, 7.5 or 7 3/4, and I had never practiced track. I played baseball.
Oh,
Wow.
They
wow.
just they just allowed me to go out there and compete in the meets. So I was not really a trackster, but I was allowed to compete in the long jump.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great accomplishment for me. I was I was a undefeated that whole year. I didn't lose
Wow.
one meet.
That's
So
amazing.
so that was a great time. But also I was primarily baseball was my really best sport.
What
I
what
went to the
position
Dodgers.
did what
I was
position
I
did you
was a
play?
shortstop, second baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Could play some third, but my I went to the Dodger trial when I was still in high school,
Oh, wow.
and I got that scholarship. I was scheduled to go to USC, and I had a good friend that going to San Jose State, and he kept telling me, man, you got to come up here to San Jose State. It's in the Bay Area, okay. And finally, my mom told me, said, well, if they're going to give you a full ride, you might want to take that. So I did.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Wow.
Yes. So you were nicknamed the Flea, and I just got to ask a question. Where did that name come from?
Well, we played an exhibition game against the LA Rams in LA, my hometown. I used to live on 39th and Santa Barbara, right? I could walk to the Coliseum at one
Hmm.
time. But anyway, in that game I caught 4 passes for 147 yards.
Oh,
And
wow.
after the game, I was being interviewed by some reporters, and head coach Blanton Collier, he was kind of nearby, and they asked him. They said, "Well, what do you think about that rookie?" And he said, "Well, he kind of reminds me of a flea nipping at elephants." And so I got stuck with that name since that time.
That's
It
that,
takes one good time for a nickname and it always sticks.
Yeah, they kind of stick. Yeah, I can be sitting in a restaurant or talking to a group of people and conversation, and they'll say, "Yeah, Walt Roberts, blah 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 blah," and nobody really remembers who that is, right? But when they say the flea,
it's like your
I,
superhero title, right?
they remember. Yes, yeah,
All
yeah.
right, Carol, do you have any questions about his college time being track, and being in the nickname or anything about that before we move on to more NFL talk?
Yeah, that's amazing with the long jump to like you say, weren't even a track guy, and you break a record that stands for the nation. That's amazing. I also was a baseball, football guy, but I went more towards football. I wish I'd have stuck with baseball with some of these contracts these guys have now. I wish I'd have played baseball a little bit longer. But how was that experience for you being a young athlete? Basically, you sound like you were a very athletic young man. What was the whole climate of the time of you coming through and being able to experience all of these things in college at San Jose State?
Oh wow, it was really quite amazing. Um, when I was coming in, I think a couple of Olympians were there, Bobby Pointer and Ray Norton. They were
Mm,
probably two of the fastest guys in the world at that time, ranked for most of the year. And so when I got there in 1960, Dr. Harry Edwards was my roommate when I first got there, along with Robert Bonds. Robert Bonds is Barry Bonds' uncle. Okay. And we had another sprinter there named Jimmy Omagbemi. He was from Lagos, Nigeria. So that was my first encounter when I got to San Jose State. But after that, I went through there were a lot of great guys came through. Dennis Johnson was one of the great sprinters all time. Um, Tommy Smith and John Carlos came after. I was leaving and they were coming in.
okay.
And of course, you know the history of that in '68, that Olympic Games. Yeah. But it was a nice time. A great experience. One of the highlights of my life, really, going to school, trying to get an education, trying to compete at a high level. San Jose State at that time was an independent. They were not part of a conference. And so we played teams every year. We played Stanford, we played Cal, we played Arizona State, Oregon, Washington State, Kansas State one year. And we fared fairly well. We were competitive, not being a big football, a football school, but we were very competitive. But you got to remember, back in those days, it was no platooning. We had to play both ways. You had to play both ways. None of this specialist stuff.
Right.
Right.
So,
So
so you had, you
what
had to be a
position?
yeah, you had to be a real football player.
Right. What position did you play on the defensive side? Since you know
I
you
was
were.
a I was a free safety,
Mm-hmm.
and I played some corner too, but primarily I was a free safety.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole time I was there, especially my senior year, we didn't have one deep ball thrown on us.
Oh. Oh wow. Yeah. Because you could stay stride for stride. So
That's right. And it wasn't just me. There was a couple other guys over there pretty good too.
yeah, and you obviously got the hands, so they were
Yeah.
probably worried. So
Yeah. And you got to be able to tackle too. Okay. You can't just none of this reach and grab and stuff.
Oh yeah.
right,
Oh
good
yeah.
form
Back in
tackle.
the day, y'all actually tackle. Y'all tackle with bad intentions back in
That's
those.
right.
Sounds good. Well, I just want to then fast forward a little bit, but also explain to our listeners that may not know. So, in the time before the NFL had the merger, there was a merger agreement. The leagues maintained separate regular season schedules from the 66 through the 69 seasons, and then officially merged in 1970 to form one league with two conferences. What were your thoughts on that time period in NFL history, sort of seeing the merger of these two big leagues and being a part of it?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of interesting because initially, I wasn't paying that much attention to all the changes that were going to take place, all the rule changes. All of a sudden, I can't remember the exact year, but they eliminated the bump and run. Okay, no more bump and run. They to kind of speed the game up, they changed the rules that you could block. You could no longer uh, uh, you didn't have to keep your arms in when you were blocking. You could extend your arms, which almost leads to you can almost hold on any play. Okay,
Right.
it's almost at the referee's discretion. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so but anyway, it was great playing against that other league because hey, we all knew that those guys they came from the same schools. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean some of them great players are where you find them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we recognized right away it wasn't going to be a cakewalk because you were playing an AFL team. They were
Right.
kicking our butts sometimes. But it was a great experience because it was they had a different approach to the game, a lot more wide open game. We pretty much still kind of lean to that running game, not throwing the ball a lot. Guys lead the league in passing now, catching 95, 80, 100 passes a year. Well, back
Right.
in the day, if you caught 40, 50 passes, you were doing great.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of changes in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then so in 1970, when it became one league, and you were, picked up by what was then called the Washington Redskins. What was
Right.
your thoughts on moving to Washington, being a part of that team in 1970, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, 1968, I didn't play in 68. I sat out the league.
Mm-hmm.
I played a total of 6 years in the league, but 68, I didn't play.
Okay.
And I was working. I was working in LA for Jim Brown's organization.
Mm.
And the Rams had called me, and they knew I was a local player from Compton High School. And so Dick Teal, Jack Teal, he was the general manager for the Rams at that time. So he called me up and said, hey, they wanted to sign me. So I'm all dressed up and I'm ready to go downtown to the Rams headquarters and sign a contract. And the phone rang. I was all dressed, ready to walk out the door. And my wife said, hey, listen, this is for you. And I stopped and grabbed the phone. And Tim Tamario was on the phone. And he said, are you Walt Roberts? I said, yeah. He said, hey, I got someone who wants to speak to you. And it was Vince Lombardi.
Mm.
And so I didn't really want to believe it at first. But after things settled down, he told me that he had just gotten a job for the Redskins and he didn't have much time. He thought I had the capabilities of making the Redskin team. And I told him that I was on my way down to sign with the Rams. And can you imagine that you're on the phone with Vince Lombardi and you tell him that, and everything is quiet for about 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Everything's quiet. And Vince has got this booming voice. When he's on the field, you can have 60,000 people in the stand and you can hear him very clearly. So anyway, everything's quiet. He didn't respond when I told him that. I said, "Hey, coach, I'm on my way down to sign with the Rams. It's a local hometown boy.
Hmm.
And he was quiet, didn't say a word. And so after a while, he broke the silence. He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you come and sign with us. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but he said, what I will guarantee is that you will get a fair chance play to make the squad." And that kind of grabbed me. I always had a great admiration for Vince Lombardi and all the Green Bay Packers. Because let me tell you, if you've ever had to play against them, especially during that time, that was a rough go.
Hmm.
When I was a rookie, we played them up in Green County Stadium in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Cold as hell, ground's frozen, and they're out there with short sleeves on. But they had great teams, though. They really did. They could run that sweep on you, and it didn't matter if you knew it was coming or not. They were going to block your ass,
Hmm.
and they ran that football.
Yeah, that's what it's all
And just a
about.
sidestep from that, I was down in New Orleans just recently when they had their 50th reunion from the season of 1967. And I was at a dinner thing with all the players. Most of those guys from 67 team are gone, by the way. I think over half of that squad has passed away.
Wow.
But anyway, I was sitting there and I saw Jim Taylor. He was over in the corner with his wife, and I got up and I went over and talked to him. He was always one of my heroes, Jim Taylor. And I told him how much I admired him. Because when you're playing, you don't have time to go through all that stuff.
Mm.
Hmm.
But I told him I just wanted to take time out to tell him how much I admired the way he played the game and the way the Packers dominated it during that period of time. And he was very gracious. He was very gracious. And actually, he passed away like 7, 8 months later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm really glad that I had that conversation with him. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Do you have any questions, Carol, about Vince Lombardi? I mean, there's a reason the trophy's named after him. To be able to play for him is just so incredible. But
Oh man, you can't imagine.
yeah,
Yeah, very tough guy, demanding. Hey, to this day, not many days go by that I don't think about it because he was really much more than a coach. See, to be a great coach, you got to be a good teacher. And see, a lot of people are not aware of it, but Vince was a lawyer, graduate out of Fordham University,
mm,
and he also had gone to the seminary early on. He dropped out, but that kind of gives you a little bit of his background. So you mix those things together, being a lawyer and gonna go into seminary and also being a good football coach. That's quite a mixture. But I learned a lot of things playing 1 year for Lombardi because he passed away. I was there in '69 and he got ill at the end of that season. In the beginning of the next season, he tried to give it a go, but it wasn't in the cards. But
yeah,
man, to learn so much from one guy in a short period of time. I got friends who played for the Packers, guys like Herb Adderley, and I always admired the fact. I said, man, you guys are very lucky. You had all those years with him. So it was much more than just playing football. It's about life. And speaking of which, I'll give you this one quote. I was at they had a May Day parade in D.C. in 1969, and I was on a show with him, and he was being interviewed, and they asked him a question, what he thought about leadership, that whole thing, coaching. And he made one statement that stuck with me all these years. He said, people want to be led, but they need good leaders. That's a key phrase. They need good leaders. And that's what he was. Vince was a good leader. He was fair, very demanding, difficult, but fair. And that's really, as an athlete, that's all you really ask for. If coaches are going to be fair with you, even sometimes if it doesn't go your way. And so that, to me, and just to give you some idea about the character of that family, I knew his wife, Marie. I didn't even realize that she knew me, that she even knew who I was. But years after he passed, every Thanksgiving or Christmas, I used to get a card from her. My family, we used to
wow,
get a card from her. That's just how much caring. Uh, they had a lot of character,
Mm.
and also Vince is the only coach I've ever played for where at one point they invited all the wives to come to his house. He had a home over in Potomac, Maryland, and he said, "Hey, I want you to make sure you don't send them by cab. You drop them off and you pick them up." He's talking to the husbands.
Hmm.
It's a great feeling. I mean, I never had a coach had a people come to his house,
Yeah.
so that built a lot of character. I mean, I had the greatest respect for him.
That's cool. It's only I'm in Rockville right now, so we're talking. I work in Potomac, so
Oh,
it's
do
funny
you?
to you know it's cool to hear
Great.
back then, and it's an incredible area. I love this area, Maryland, and it's just the history and of the franchise, and it's I know it's kind of fallen a little bit on hard times more recently, and there's some
Yeah,
difficulties, and there's a lot of quarterback controversy, and it's become an
yeah.
interesting team. But what are some of the things that you remember the most about playing for the team back then?
But for the Redskins,
Yeah.
well, we had a real good team, and don't forget now, the nucleus of that team in '69. You're talking about the recruitment of Larry Brown. You know that great running back.
Hmm.
Okay. Another teammate of mine in high school was brought in, Charlie Haraway.
Oh wow, yeah.
Charlie Haraway was brought in. Uh, so they put together and they already had Lynn Hoss, the center. They had Chris Hamburger, some great players already there. But that was the nucleus of the team that wound up going to the Super Bowl in '72.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And of
that's
course, Sonny Jurgensen, I think he got injured. He didn't play in the Super Bowl, but he was there. I think he had a Achilles, some problem he had. But he was a great player. I mean, that was the nucleus of a good team. Yeah. But I remember the toughest thing I remember about that whole season really is the training camp. See, if you could live and get through training camp, you felt like you'd been through a war. It was that difficult. And this is a note for all those 300-pound linemen out there now. If you had to go through a Lombardi training camp, I doubt seriously if you could get through it. Okay, we had to do every day. Had to go through all those stations. Had to go through the grass drills. The grass drills. We did 80 of them one day. All pads. None of this short shit. Excuse my language.
no, you're fine.
Hey, up and down, down,
Yeah.
up, down. 80.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
after that, he got us all together. He said, "Okay, you guys are looking pretty good now. So tomorrow we're going to get ready for the big push." Guys are passed out. He's talking about the big push.
Yeah, I
But
used
another interesting thing, these things really had probably very little to do with football. But in 1969, July 20th, he called everybody together on the field. We were at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And he was looking at his watch. He was timing it when the moon landing was going to take place.
Oh
And as
wow.
soon as the eagle landed, he was telling everybody. He said, to this point, he said, I think this is probably man's greatest achievement at that time. And so, I don't know if any other coach even thought about it like that, but he made a real point of how much he thought about that. He was very patriotic. That's another great thing. I mean, if you want to see a real American, you can talk to Vince Lombardi. Yeah. So I think those things were great, but he instilled something in us that we never had before. Because you got to remember, when I got there in '68, the Redskins hadn't had a winning season in 14 years.
Yeah.
And so that year we wound up 7-5-2. The two ties. I don't even remember who we tied with. I think the Eagles was one of them. But anyway, he took a team that was like mediocre at best, and he turned them into a playoff team.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thought that was great. You don't get a lot of mention of it because right after he passed, um, of course, George Allen came in, and so people tend to forget, and it's understandable. But Vince Lombardi, that was really a great opportunity to play for him.
Well, it sort of set up a culture shift, right? That ultimately led to the championship. And you just gotta, I always try to warn people that are current fans of the team that they can't, it might not be today where we're a championship team, but the culture's got to change. It's got to shift. And then
it has to change.
And maybe a couple of years down the line, then you get the championship. It doesn't often happen in a flip of a switch. And
no, that's very true.
And people are expecting Haskins to be our savior in just day one, and without the training camps, without with all the COVID stuff, it's like the expectations are maybe too high. And I don't blame Coach for taking a chance here with the division so close, and let's see what some of these other players can do. And do you still follow today's NFL very much, or?
Yeah. Well, to a certain extent, I'm not an avid fan, but I do watch it from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got two grandsons that live in Cypress, Texas, and both of them are 6'4.5", a lot taller than I am.
Right.
But anyway, so one of them is a football player, so I kind of pay attention because he's still involved.
That's great.
Yeah, I do. But it's a great game, and it's good to see these guys now giving the effort they're giving just to kind of maintain some contact, because this is a tough time now with the pandemic. I mean, we have to all be careful. Life is precious. Can't take it for granted. And so we have to be careful. And so they're trying to maintain, and so they're sacrificing, just like the NBA has done. I think that's a great deal. They sacrifice a lot, and it's nice to see that, because it's just a game, right? But competition is what makes human beings kind of makes us function every day, makes us functionary. Competition, the art of competition, and the ability to do what it takes to win and be a gracious loser. I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with congratulating the guy if they win today. I don't have a problem with that. But you got to give it your all while you out there trying to compete. And that's what really good coaches, that's what they teach. Give it your all. Be professional. Go at it the right way. And just revert back to Jim Brown. That's what I really loved about him. When you're getting dressed for a game and getting your stuff on and everything's quiet, and Jim's kind of sitting over, not in the corner, but he's over by himself. Never said a word. All he's doing is getting focused, getting ready to play the game. And guys like that kind of teach you a lot just by what they do, not what they say. And so it's a great, I had great experience. The only thing I'm sorry about, we didn't make a lot of money back in the day.
Yeah.
See, that's when everybody was on, guys had to have an off-season job. I worked off-season, many seasons. Yeah.
What sort of work did you do on the off-season?
Well, when I was in Cleveland, I worked for the American Greeting Card Corporation. I was a dealer correspondent. Okay. And in a couple of years, I came home. I worked with my dad. My dad had an auto wrecking yard, and I used to work with him in the summers. Spent a lot of time with him. And my last year, when I was in '68, when I didn't play, when I worked for Jim Brown's organization, I got introduced to a lot of people like Bill Cosby, Tony Curtis, Tony Franciosa, the actress Gene Seberg, a lot of people who were very instrumental in helping that organization flourish. And that was a nice experience. It was a great experience outside of football. Yeah. But nowadays, guys make so much money, they can year round, they don't have to work.
Right.
Unless they just want to.
Yeah. I don't know anyone that does much other than, a couple little things here and there, but
some promos here, promos there.
Right.
Must be nice.
Yeah. For sure. So, you've had such an interesting career. I know I've talked to our mutual friend Erla Hill, about you for a long time. So I really appreciate, being able to, talk. But I know that you are a big fan of other sports, including, boxing and things of that nature. I know you just mentioned the Lakers there. Are you watching this championship run? I'm a Laker fan. Yeah, so that's exciting.
During my growing up, I had a lot of disappointments because we had to go up against the Celtics every year.
Well, I'll say I've got hanging up over here. I've got this.
Kobe.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah, so
cool.
he's always been important to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's so great. So talk a little bit about I guess uh, Cassius Clay and some of those
Oh,
other
wow.
boxing inspirational people for you.
Well, when I came to San Jose State in 1960, they had the Olympic boxers trained at San Jose State.
Mm-hmm.
And just before I got here, my good friend, he was a coach. He's retired now, Cass Jackson. He's kind of raised in San Jose. He's from San Jose, and Bob Bronson was the athletic director at the time, and he's probably mostly responsible for the great coach Bill Walsh, who came out of San Jose State. Okay, the Niners head coach for all those years. But anyway, Bob Bronson calls up Cass Jackson and tells him, "Hey, I want you to come over and bring your buddies and come over and pick up this young kid. He's 17 years old, and he need to have some guys his age to hang around." And it was Cassius Clay.
Wow,
This is 1960, prior to the Olympics.
that's amazing.
Yeah. And a boxing coach at San Jose State, Julie Menendez, who passed away just a couple of years ago. He's the only coach I know that's coached in the Olympics in boxing and soccer.
Oh,
He's
wow.
the only coach I think that's ever done that. But anyway, we were going to watch the Cassius Clay Sonny Liston fight, the championship fight. And we're walking down towards the Dianza Hotel in San Jose. And Julie Menendez is he's walking ahead of us. And we're all, talking. We were kind of weary for Muhammad because, Liston was the big bear, man. He's been knocking out everybody who showed up.
Yeah.
So we asked Julie, because he coached him in the Olympics, 1960. We said, Julie, what do you think? You think he got a chance to win this fight? And then Julie said, oh, yeah, he's going to win. He said he'd never seen a kid who had so much motivation. He said they would wake up at 4 o'clock to go do road work. Muhammad or even Cassius had already done his homework, his road work, and was ready to go again. He was a 17-year-old kid. so he said he had so much talent, untapped talent. He said, oh, no, he's going to win. We didn't really want to believe him, but we were rooting for Cassius Clay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, great admiration. I've met a lot of great guys who I really admired, guys like Sugar Ray Robinson. Might be the greatest fighter ever fought, really, when you think about it. If you look back. So I met a lot of guys. Met Ken Norton. He's from L.A. originally, San Diego by way of L.A. So yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a boxing fan. Julie used to always tell me, "Hey, you could come over and box, and you could probably be a middleweight champion." I go, "Oh no, that's not my stick."
That's
I don't
great.
mind football. I love the contact of football, but I don't think I want to be in the ring with some guy who maybe could hit harder than me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
getting hit with pads on is a whole different ballgame than getting hit straight in the middle of the ring in your
that's
face.
right. And you ain't got no help in there. You're by yourself. Can't call for
Nobody
help.
blocking for you.
Yeah. But no, I'm pretty much a fan. I like all the sports. I grew up playing them all. I kind of wish I'd played baseball sometimes because I didn't realize I'd miss it as much as I did. Because when I went to school, you can't play baseball and football. You can't do all that. You can't. Just not enough time. And so I kind of left that behind. But I think most of the guys I grew up with played baseball. I mean, guys like Roy White played 13 years with the Yankees. Reggie Smith played, I don't know, 14 years with Red Sox and the Dodgers. A lot of guys, Paul Shaw played 10 years with the California Angels. All the guys I grew up with played baseball. They played pro baseball. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
baseball was definitely more popular back then in
Yeah.
black
Yeah.
community than it is now. So yeah, definitely baseball was the ticket back in the day.
Exactly.
Good. All right. Well, I want to be mindful of your time since it's already been it's amazing 40 minutes, but it's such an incredible interview, and maybe we'll have you back on to talk some more in the future. It was a really nice. It was an honor to meet you, and
Hey,
it was fun to talk with
thanks,
you.
man. Hey, it's my pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it greatly.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it being here. Got to thank Yerla for inviting me.
Yes, I will definitely do so. Definitely do so. Thank you
No,
so
it's been
much.
a pleasure. Been a pleasure. Hey, I won't say go Redskins now. I say go Washington.
There we go. Sounds good. I appreciate it. All
Hey,
right.
no problem.
You have a good night.